Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Switch to Life, and in today's video we are going to be reviewing Jurassic Park 3 in preparation for Jurassic World Rebirth hitting theaters this July. So without further ado, let's dive into the video. So honestly, I'm just gonna say that this movie is probably the worst of the entire Jurassic franchise. I mean, it's still good, it's just not as good as the other ones. I will dive into why I think that is, but for now, we're going to dive into a non-spoiler warning. First off, I want to talk about the puppetry and CGI of the dinosaurs. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I feel like it's a bit of a downgrade after the first two movies. I feel like at this point, they relied a bit too heavily on CGI, and it just wasn't as good as it needed to be. And of course, the big bad of the movie, the Spinosaurus, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like he was just a little too janky. See, he's supposed to be portrayed as this big dinosaur who was never supposed to be created because he wasn't on InGen's list of dinosaurs that was made. The Spinosaurus is an amalgamation, which if you don't know what that means, just basically means that you take the base genome of one dinosaur and then you insert the genomes of a bunch of other dinosaurs so that you can give it some cool features. Again, that's not really a hybrid dinosaur. A hybrid is when you take two species, or maybe more, and splice them together to create something new. They were going for a Spinosaurus, but just didn't have enough DNA to get the full Spinosaurus, so they filled it with other dinosaurs. That's an amalgamation. But what that means is that this Spinosaurus is technically portrayed as a monster, but I never really got that feeling. I felt like his movements were just too janky, and there's no way that in real life a Spinosaurus would be so concerned with trying to catch a bunch of humans just because they hit his back fin with their plane. He would take revenge on the plane, but it's not like he would know there were humans flying said plane. The fact that he chased them across the island of Isla Sorna is just mind-blowing to me because that is not typical animal behavior. If anything, the velociraptors had more of a motive to chase the humans, not only because humans happen to be a good source of food for the smaller velociraptors compared to the one bite and it's done Spinosaurus, but of course, the humans also stole some velociraptor eggs and they want to get them back. Though speaking of, I admit I do love the new designs of the velociraptors, mostly because they added some quill-like feathers, which, if you don't know, most dinosaurs nowadays are considered to have had feathers back when they were alive, especially raptors, because the word raptor literally means bird of prey. But as I was saying, I really enjoyed the designs as well as the movement of the velociraptors, but with the Spinosaurus and a couple of the other dinosaurs, I felt like they were just too janky with their animatronics and the CGI wasn't good enough to help out. And that's just kind of sad to me. We also have the music, which, if you ask me, is really good because it has the iconic Jurassic Park music, but unfortunately, I don't think the new music was that good compared to the music of the first two movies, or even the later Jurassic World movies. We also have the actors, and I felt like they did a pretty good job of portraying their characters, especially whenever they showed a lot of fear. And now, with all that out of the way, it's time to dive into the story. So, we are reintroduced to Alan Grant. I am so glad that he's back, and he's talking about how John Hammond and the team at InGen recreated the dinosaurs, but he believes what they really did was create a bunch of monsters. Paleontology is the only accurate way to find out what exactly dinosaurs were like. Unfortunately, most of the world thinks that's stupid because dinosaurs literally exist today on an island. But again, Alan Grant thinks that those ones are monsters and are not scientifically accurate. Unfortunately, due to that popular belief, paleontology has become a dying art and he's going to lose his job if he doesn't get some income. Then he meets a couple named Paul and Amanda Kirby from Kirby Enterprises, and they agree to write down as many zeros on a check as they want, as long as he becomes a kind of tour guide for them when they fly in a plane over Isla Sorna, and they're low enough to see the dinosaurs. Alan Grant agrees to this, this and even brings his own apprentice, Billy, and they fly to Isla Sorna, only for the plane to land on Isla Sorna, much to Alan Grant's disappointment, and he tells them that they need to get out of there, but unfortunately during takeoff they crash into the back fin of the Spinosaurus, and it causes them to crash. The Spinosaurus eats a couple of the humans there, but nobody really important. That's when it's revealed that Paul and Amanda don't really work for a super rich company. They can't actually pay Alan Grant. The only reason that they brought him along was because it was recommended they bring a guide who's been to the island of Isla Sorna before. Unfortunately, Alan Grant has never been to Isla Sorna. He went to Isla Nublar back in the first movie. There's 2 different dinosaur islands, and well, now they're all stranded on Isla Sorna. Now, you might be wondering, why would they risk coming to Isla Sorna? Well, because Paul and Amanda lost their son, Eric, who went on a parasailing trip with a trusted friend of theirs. Now, we don't really know what happens to the boat, but we know that the boat is attacked. I'm going to assume by the Spinosaurus, since as of right now, that is the only dinosaur that's proven to swim. I know some of you might be thinking of the Mosasaurus from Jurassic World, but unfortunately, that creature hasn't been born yet as of the time of Jurassic Park 3. So anyway, the boat crashes into the rocks and they cut the line so that they can parasail to safety on Isla Sorna, but unfortunately they're stranded there. So Paul and Amanda are coming to Isla Sorna to rescue their son. And I really love the fact that Paul and Amanda aren't actually husband and wife. They used to be, but they got divorced. And now they're forced to work together because of the love they share for their son. And the thing is, they actually work really well together, which is not something you expect from a divorced couple, but hey, here we are. Now then we get to the controversial scene. Which do you guys think should have won the fight? The T-Rex or the Spinosaurus? Because the Spinosaurus ends up killing the iconic T-Rex, and a lot of people hate the Spinosaurus for that. A lot of people love the Spinosaurus for that. Oh, by the way, this isn't a T-Rex in any of the other properties. It's a brand new T-Rex that's made specifically for this movie. Anyway, the humans are stranded on the island, and they decide the best course of action is to make their way to the coast and maybe find the satellite phone so that they can call for help. Unfortunately, the satellite phone was being held by Cooper, and Cooper was eaten by the Spinosaurus. So they have to make their way for the coast and hope for the best. The humans explore a genetics lab where they're attacked by a group of velociraptors, at which point Alan Grant is separated from the rest of the team, and he manages to find Eric, who takes him to a shelter where he's been surviving on Isla Sorna for the past 8 weeks. And I also really love how resourceful Eric is. I mean, the fact that he was able to collect T-Rex pee and use it to scare off a bunch of Compsognathus is really cool. Eventually, they reunite with the rest of the humans, and there's a heartwarming reunion between the Kirbys, and that's when Bill asks for Alan Grant to give him his bag back. Alan says he can carry it, it's no big deal, but then Billy demands that he get the bag back, and that just unsettles Alan. He opens up the bag and discovers that Billy stole some Velociraptor eggs when they discovered the Velociraptor nests. And the reason was because he wanted to sell the eggs for money to save the paleontology dig. Yeah, if you ask me, that's actually a valid reason to chase humans across the island. Anyway, they try to get rid of the Velociraptor eggs, but then Alan thinks better of it. What happens when the Velociraptors come for them and they don't have the eggs? They're going to die, so it's better to keep the eggs until the Velociraptors come to claim them. So they make their way through an avian cage where a bunch of pteranodons and other flying pterosaurs are kept. And unfortunately, Eric is taken by the pteranodons, and when they try to rescue him, they can't. And that's when Billy remembers that they stole the parasail from the dead body of Ben, who went parasailing with Eric, the whole reason this movie started. So he uses the parasail and makes his way to Eric and gets him to safety, but the pteranodons end up attacking Billy, and unfortunately, Billy ends up washed downstream where he supposedly dies. So they use a boat to make their way downriver so that they can get to the coast and to safety, and that's when Alan and Eric have this conversation about how there are 2 types of people in this world. There are astronomers and there are astrologists. Astrologists get to learn about space. They get to study everything from a place of safety, but they never actually get to experience it for themselves. That's where the astronomer comes in. They want to experience that stuff for themselves, even if it's dangerous. He says that Billy is an astronomer. While yes, Billy did steal a couple of velociraptor eggs, he's still a good person. All he ever wanted, though, was to experience dinosaurs up close and personal. Unlike Alan, who's satisfied with studying paleontology from the fossils, which are safe. And then, of course, they hear the jingle from the satellite phone, and they fear that the Spinosaurus has found them, but it's revealed to just be coming from a pile of poop. So they search through the poop, at which point they find the satellite phone, and they say that they can get one good call from it because there's just not enough battery for two. Alan decides to call up his friend Ellie Sattler, who, after the events of the first Jurassic Park movie, she wanted to have kids. And unfortunately, we know that while Alan Grant did go through a bit of character development in the first movie, he still didn't want to have kids. So she moved on, she got married, and she has a new baby boy named Charlie. So Charlie answers the phone, takes it to his mom, at which point Alan tells Ellie that they are under attack from the Spinosaurus on Isla Sorna, and they need to send rescue. And, well, surprisingly, Ellie actually comes through. We'll talk about that later. But then they're attacked by the Spinosaurus, and they get into a final battle, and eventually manage to beat the Spinosaurus using fire. And at first it seems like Paul sacrificed himself to do it, but he just managed to survive by swimming in the water. So they continue onward until they're attacked by the velociraptors, at which point they hand over the velociraptor eggs to the raptors, and then Alan Grant does something cool. At the start of the movie, they discover the cranial chamber of the velociraptor using fossils, and they 3D print it, at which point Alan Grant uses this vocal chamber of the velociraptor to tell the velociraptors to go home back to their nest. So that's exactly what the raptors do. They return home with the eggs. And that's when the humans finally make their way to the coast, and it's revealed that Ellie came through and sent over the Marines, the military, and a bunch of crazy stuff to rescue them. I am honestly not sure how Ellie managed to pull that off. There is no way that they would spend a bunch of resources to rescue a few people from an island infested with dinosaurs, but here we are. And that's when it's revealed that Billy actually managed to survive. He floated the entire way downriver, at which point the military found him, at which point they start treating his wounds. Then when Billy meets up with Alan, he says, "I hung on to your hat," and gives it to him. And that's a pretty cool gesture between good friends. And then the film ends with the helicopter flying off, and as it flies off, they look out the window and see a bunch of pterosaurs flying over to the mainland, which is kind of set up for a potential sequel, but honestly, that plot thread never goes anywhere because off-screen, Vic Hoskins, who is a character from Jurassic World, actually was responsible for capturing the pterosaurs that escaped from Isla Sorna. And that's the end of the movie. To recap, I would say that this is honestly a good movie. Again, at the start of the movie, I said that this is the worst movie of the Jurassic franchise. Still good, but the worst. And the reason I say this is because there's not really any good, meaningful deaths. I mean, yes, there's the T-Rex, but what I mean is we never really got emotionally invested with any of the characters who died, except for Billy when he supposedly died, only to be revealed during the last 2 minutes that he managed to live. But what I mean is Cooper was killed after just 2 minutes of screen time, and Udesky, while we did get to know a lot about him a little bit, he ended up dying halfway through the movie because of the velociraptors. And I will admit, I did love the way that he died. The velociraptors maimed him, but they left him alive so that he could call for help and set up a trap that would lure the other humans and put them in the jaws of the velociraptors. That's a really great idea, to be honest. Unfortunately, when the trap fails, the velociraptors snap his neck and kill him. Aside from that, there's not really any significant deaths in this movie. We're not really emotionally invested with any of the characters who die, and that's the big problem that I have with this film. Combine that with the janky movements of the Spinosaurus as well as its misbehavior. That and it's the short runtime of this film, which is less than an hour and a half compared to the other movies, which are almost or more than 2 hours. And honestly, I would say that this movie is kind of an outlier with the rest of the franchise. I admit it's still good, but unfortunately the worst of the entire Jurassic saga. But with all of that in mind, what do you guys think? Make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. And also, which do you prefer, the classic velociraptors or the feather velociraptors? There's actually a fan base out there that took to naming one of the velociraptors Quilliam based off of the quills that they have. And with all of that in mind, make sure that you subscribe so that you can keep up to date when I post the later Jurassic movie installments leading up to the review of Jurassic World Rebirth this July. And if you really want to support the channel, be sure to join my membership program. But with all that in mind, make sure that you are staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.
That is a very, very bad idea.
Amanda, Dr. Grant said that's a bad idea.
What?
He says it's a bad idea.
What's a bad idea?